All right, team, welcome back to After Hours. We have a great show for you today. News was looking a little dry, but I looked into the XRP archives and found some great news for you guys. And we are going to be providing you some deep analysis today and some real application for what it means for XRP holders with these companies, Matt, going to be hoarding XRP and doing something akin to MicroStrategy with their Bitcoin purchases. And you have a couple companies we're going to talk about today are going to be stockpiling XRP for their treasury. So we're going to get into that, which is super bullish, by the way, with these companies hoarding XRP. And at the back half, if we have enough time, we'll discuss the US government, a little update with how's it going with their Bitcoin reserve and their crypto stockpile. And really it's just seized funds. So we'll discuss that and talk about what they're holding. This is After Hours, team. Before we get into some of the important news for today, I quickly want to iron out some quick definitions that we're going to be going over today. One of them being a treasury strategy. This just means when we talk about treasury strategy, this just means getting the company together, shareholders, what to do with the funds they have. Liquid, short-term investments, treasuries, anything really liquid. That's what it means to approach it with a treasury strategy. And a lot of these treasury strategies are going to be with a focal point of XRP, just like with MicroStrategy. What's MicroStrategy's treasury strategy, Maddie? It's buy as much Bitcoin as possible. So maybe these companies will adopt that approach, but they're taking a little bit smaller steps to getting a hold of XRP, as well as I wanted to discuss. We talked a couple months ago about how MicroStrategy gets a hold of Bitcoin, and today we're going to talk about that as well. But how does a company get a hold of funds to buy a digital asset? Well, there's a couple of ways. One of the examples today is a company just has a lot of cash, a lot of liquid assets that could be given attention to buying XRP. So it's very liquid, and the transaction can happen very easily like that. Another company like MicroStrategy, made popular, is selling stock and with the raising of capital, buying Bitcoin. And one of the companies is doing that today. So just getting through, treasury strategies and the actual how does a company get the funds. We are going to be looking at these companies today, and it's pretty impressive. And I'm very excited as an XRP holder for the Saudis getting involved with XRP on a big scale with American companies. But before we get into some of the bigger news for today, team, it's important. Become a Crypto Charged member. Click the pin link down below. Matt, what do they get at Crypto Charged?
Hey guys, Crypto Charge, a lot of the stuff that we do here on the show with you guys, making sure you guys are up to date on, big macro events, news, teaching you guys a bit about the technology, but really taking a big look at the charts each and every day, Monday through Friday. We also have our coin library on our website with giving you guys those exit and entry plans, especially for early bids or maybe short on time. We also do our daily ed, so it's a written summary of our post or our show every day. So if you guys are unable to catch the show, or you guys have kids and jobs and lots of things going on, so we do that written summary so you guys at least have that touch point, as well as a Discord community where you guys can ask questions. We are in there 7 days a week, and that all comes at $49 a month or $4.99 for the year. Save a little bit of money annually with code YouTube, plus a 30-day free trial. So even if you guys are just mildly curious, you guys are new, you guys have been in the space a little while, take those 30 days, check it out. I think that a lot of you guys might be surprised with the amount of value you guys get for that amount of money. And again, day 29, it's not for you. Send us an email. You won't be charged anything.
Absolutely. Matt, really excited to get into the news for today. Let's discuss first VivoPower. VivoPower announced XRP-focused digital asset treasury strategy and raising of $121 million. So VivoPower is a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and they have some backers in Saudi Arabia. So the Prince Highness, let me see if I can get his name right, Abdulaziz bin Turki bin Talil Al Saud. He's the chairman of 11th holding company in Saudi Arabia. And with the funds they are depositing at VivoPower, they are kind of like on the board of VivoPower. And so they are kind of like a backing. So when we refer to the Prince Highness, he's actually very bullish on XRP. He's very bullish on the XRPL. So, when they have their little board meetings and they discuss XRP, you have a plethora of people at VivoPower that are actually really pro XRP. So you have Prince Highness. You also have the executive chairman, Mr. Chen, and then they also brought on a former Ripple board member to be a part. So you have someone that was formerly working with XRP related products at Ripple. You have, His Royal Highness, and then you have the executive chair, all really bullish on XRP. And so what are they actually going to be doing, right? They want to pick up large clumps of XRP, but in a very different manner than MicroStrategy has done, right? Not in the manner of purchasing, but what actually is going to transpire with those purchasing, right? So you want to buy XRP for the long term. Hey, it's a very volatile asset, as we get into the charting so often, and you kind of have to get over that with these volatile assets and think longer term. They are thinking longer term here, and they are going to be buying XRP, and they're getting funds together. They're are actually doing something very akin to MicroStrategy, and what they're doing is they are selling stock, raising capital, and going to be buying XRP. So they have a board meeting this June 18th for the shareholders or shareholder meeting, and that should give us a very good clue on what's happening. And we'll get into a little bit news later on how it's actually transpiring. But so we have the raise of capital, we have Saudi involvement here, we got the Saudi money, and there's a lot of involvement here. But Maddie, let's talk about hoarding XRP. You have a publicly traded company going to be buying XRP for their treasury. It's going to be a treasury asset of theirs. Maddie, XRP is super volatile, and you really have to weather the storm with volatile assets.
Yeah, definitely have to understand that, when you make these kinds of allocations with things like XRP or Bitcoin or Ether, whatever we're looking at here, that you're not always going to be able to have the book value that you need to show if you're in an environment or a newer business where you don't have, a very clear understanding of like where you need to be financially if everything really starts to crumble down. So it's a very specific allocation for a specific kind of person. It's also a very interesting thing to think about, where in the sense of like it's not just a stock or companies just buying stocks in other companies. It also is a commodity, right? Because you can actually use XRP. It's not just a stock that you can go and sell. So it's interesting that you have companies that may be utilizing some of the XRP for internal management, internal blockchain management, building their own permissions applications for their companies and using XRP in that way, but also potentially as an asset where you're either lending it out. You could even offer OTC, over-the-counter services from your company with an XRP hoard, and some of it, of course, to be able to borrow against in the future and use that for other cash flowing ventures, even if maybe you want to start another treasury. So it's a very unique market. To me, it's almost to the sense of being able to have physical gold or silver or barrels of oil as part of your treasury, where the value is truly tied to the market value, but you also have the ability to utilize that commodity in its raw form. It's a very unique thing to hold on your balance sheet. So over time, we'll probably see a little bit more of that supply get locked up over time. I don't think it's going to be the overnight institutions buy up 80% of XRP volume in a 2-year period, but I do think over time, as XRP drops get burned, as you start to see some companies maybe starting to use it, you start to see other stuff borrowed out against it, so it's less likely to be sold as the underlying asset. That can create much higher prices over time, but not 1-2 years for my at least point of view here.
Right. And I wanted to mention, so you have this, strategy of adding XRP to the treasury, but something else they mentioned within their update is not just that, but actually tackling applications within the XRPL. So when we look up actors within networks, you're going to see VivoPower be one of those actors in the coming future. They actually want to participate. And with the amount of funds that are, being brought up here, you have, they raised $121 million. Not all that money is going to be bought immediately. They have, we'll get into the announcement later, but they're taking a portion of those funds and buying XRP, I would imagine within a couple of transactions with their over-counter broker. But the extra funds, you have they're going to be taking, I'm just going to say $100 million. I'm trying to save the other news article, $100 million with BitGo. And there's going to be some extra leftover money that they'll probably be doing some buying in the future. But I wanted to read, so all this sounds great, Matt. And I was really if we just stopped there with XRP, it'd be it sounds kind of great on paper. And then I started reading some of the quotes from the Prince Highness, and I was like, holy crap, this guy's a mega bull on XRP. And I wanted to quickly read that right here. So His Royal Prince Highness, Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki bin Talil Al Saud says, "We have been investors in the digital asset sector for a decade and have been long-term holders of XRP. After reviewing a number of listed vehicles seeking to embrace a digital asset treasury model, we selected VivoPower given its strategic focus on XRP and its objective to contribute to building out the XRPL ecosystem. Furthermore, we are committed to the long-term partnership objective that we share with Kevin Chen and his team. We are honored to be leading this capital raising for a company that will be the first in the world executing on an XRP-focused treasury strategy. Having met with President Trump and his leadership group during their recent visit to Saudi Arabia, we believe the timing is appropriate for digital assets and blockchain tech to be rolled out in the kingdom, and we are delighted to be assisting VivoPower in this regard. One of the things mentioned in the update was this, the strategic reserve. And, we talked about the strategic reserve when it came out, Bitcoin reserve and, the crypto stockpile. And one of the things I mentioned then is what happens with other nations. But in this case, what is happening with Saudi Arabia, of course, but what is going to be happening with other companies like VivoPower with purchasing XRP? Actually, in the update, they mentioned that they noticed that Trump incorporated XRP into their crypto stockpile, because it's one of 5 other digital assets within the stockpile. And with their regard of buying XRP and being holders of XRP and being bullish on XRP, and now the United States being bullish on XRP, the time was for, one of their actors being VivoPower of the Saudis to now go ahead and buy XRP, which is tremendous. And so we can kind of see, I think we can kind of connect the dots here on how even the language of the strategic reserve is transpiring here. I wanted to also read the executive chairman of VivoPower, Kevin Chen. He said, "We are incredibly privileged to have His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki bin Talil Al Saud of Saudi Arabia leading this transformational capital raising, and are also pleased to welcome other digital asset industry investors joining in this round." This is where the other people that are coming in is former people on the Ripple board. As long-term holder of XRP myself, we all share a common vision and objective with regards to how a publicly listed XRP-focused treasury company can be scaled for the benefit of the XRP community and VivoPower shareholders alike. Furthermore, I am personally enthusiastic about the multiple real-world use cases that help resolve issues such as international wire payment friction, which we have experienced firsthand given the markets we operate in. And we can see a number of potentials, XRP blockchain solutions for Teambo Business and Carrot Digital businesses. And those last 2 businesses are their subsidiaries. So maybe a lot of these, you got VivoPower, you got Teambo, Carrot Digital. These are probably the names you're going to see popping up, partaking in XRPL applications in DeFi relations with lending, borrowing, anything with yield that could be happening on the XRPL. So we got the Saudis in, and we got Kevin Chen backing up. And last thing, I wanted to get a note. I know I'm reading a lot of quotes here, but I read all these quotes and I was like, holy crap, this kind of internalizes it for me. This makes it real. Adam Traidman, he's a former Ripple board member. He said, "Having been involved with Ripple since its formative years, I've seen the strength and adaptability of the XRPL ecosystem. VivoPower's initiative to become the first publicly listed company with an XRP-centric treasury strategy is a forward-thinking move that reflects growing institutional conviction and a real-world blockchain applications. I look forward to contributing to the company's efforts in scaling its XRP presence." So, Maddie, hoarding XRP along with participating on the ledger. I think this sounds pretty bullish.
Definitely super bullish. I mean, really, between the lines, right? We're talking about an over-the-counter desk, right? Like that's really what's being developed here for qualified purchasers, for hedge funds. There's a lot of power when you have a good custody solution or you're partnering someone like BitGo. It creates a lot of flexibility with your offerings down the road. The other thing that we mentioned in one of those quotes that was, I think, one of the things that, even though it's very basic fact about XRP, but the friction that we have for international wire transfers. Again, you're going to talk to people about things like XRP or even HBAR, other high quality assets that do really good throughput with high security, using a very unique consensus model. And the average person, even when you explain it all, is never going to appreciate what's actually being done because they're not making transactions more than a few $100s at a time on average, and they're not sending money outside the country. But when you do business in another country, there is generally a much higher cost to do business, or you have to let the money spend a lot more time getting there, which there's a cost to that as well, right? Anytime money is in transit, that's dead money to some extent, right? Until it's been fully credited. So it's not just so much the transaction cost. There is a huge cost of not having instant finality in addition to liquidity. So I think it's really going to unlock a lot. I'm glad that we're starting to see some bigger players out there getting into the game and really starting to bring a little bit more real world, use case application, showing that this is a market that needs to be facilitated at this level of, additional OTC desks and things like that. It's always crazy too that we've talked about with price. A lot of people say, oh, well, when this happens and I see that narrative happen and then I'll get in on XRP or get in on this. And you can see that we're, hovering over $2 with very little pullbacks here. And this is kind of the time you start to see that. So yeah, I of course think that XRP is going to go much, much higher over long periods of time. And I think they know that as well. And especially if you're in a treasury based position and you're also utilizing those assets for, tokenization or internal treasury management or offering OTC products, it puts you in a very good position where you have a lot of flexibility with those assets. So I'm very excited to see it. And I think that, again, like with anything you see done on a large scale for the first time like this, their success is going to be able to be emulated by others who want to enter the space that have maybe experience or customers in the trad space that want this kind of exposure or these kinds of railways. So I think this is just the beginning.
Absolutely. And so that was last week's news. And so VivoPower's stock pumped on this news, and you're seeing some correction with that stock today. Nothing goes up in a straight line. But we got the most recent news is right here. BitGo enters strategic partnership with VivoPower to facilitate its initial $100 million XRP acquisition for Treasury strategy. So the partnership with BitGo, very familiar name in the crypto industry, and going to be transacting out of that $121 million, $100 million initially for XRP acquisition. So a couple steps ahead with this company, but I wanted to talk about, so this isn't the only company that's looking to build an XRP treasury and looking to implement some strategies to get a hold of XRP. We also have here, Webus International reveals 300 million XRP treasury bid to power borderless payments. So Webus International is a Chinese AI-powered company, and they have a lot of capital access right now. They have a lot of cash reserves. They have a lot of short-term treasuries that they have on hand. They have a lot of liquid investment vehicles that they can actually use to buy up XRP within itself. They don't actually have to issue stocks in the fashion of the other company, VivoPower, where they're selling some stocks, raising capital, and with that capital, buying XRP. This company in itself has enough to go out and buy XRP. They're like a couple steps behind VivoPower right now, and they don't have Saudi backing, and so they're kind of on a couple steps moving in that direction. But again, another company here going to be buying up XRP, not in the manner that VivoPower is, because they're looking for XRPL applications. This other company is just looking right now, from what I've seen, to buy XRP within itself. And so people are looking at XRP in the same fashion that MicroStrategy or MetaPlanet, for that matter, looks at Bitcoin. And so very impressive thinking long-term about these assets. And I want to mention something, Matt, and we can bring up the investor mindset right here, because I feel like this is very important. Do not think for a moment that you are Michael Saylor and you are running strategy right now and can just buy whenever. You cannot. MicroStrategy has been buying Bitcoin for 5 years, okay? They are in a position to say and do whatever as it relates to their investment strategy. They can buy whenever. Matt, if one was to implement what potentially VivoPower or Webus International is about to implement with their XRP buying, what does that actually look like for an investor right now? If you were to buy up XRP over the next, DCA into XRP and enter a bull run, what would that look like for an investor?
It's just generally not going to work out very well for an average retail investor, because when you start to play with assets that have already made some pretty decent impulsive moves, you look at market capitalization, regardless of all of the other bullishness that's out there. You start to kind of look at the downside risk from where you're at, even if we still have a little bit further to go. You have to be a lot more tactical about how you do potentially play those trades. Be prepared to take stuff off the table, because you don't have that continuous influx of just big institutional checks coming in where you can just basically cover up all your previous day's losses. It doesn't matter because your time horizons are 20 years. I think that the average person, especially while this space is still offering a lot of room for growth and we still see the markets go into very, very deep bears, that it makes more sense for us to be tactical, to average into stuff that's still in a good value zone, has good risk to reward. Because again, guys, our goal here is not to perfectly time the top and the bottom of the market. It's to mitigate risk on both sides of the trade, including how much risk we have entering the trade, as well as having multi-steps on the way out. Hey, we only got 2 out of 3 right. Okay, cool. At least we recovered our initial capital. We took a very nice profit, and now we're going to go ahead and re-strategize on what we want to do with this bag that didn't get sold because target 3 didn't get hit or whatever, right? But a lot of you guys aren't even thinking through that process. So just trying to blindly get into XRP, DCA every day without kind of having any pulse of what's happening from a macro or market perspective is probably not going to put you in the most profitable position long term.
Mitigate risk as much as possible. And that's something we constantly talk about. And just because many people have reaped so much success with Bitcoin over the years, that doesn't mean this really doesn't mean that you could even make it through this bull run if you were to pick up Bitcoin or pick up XRP right now and go into this bull run and see these highs that we're going to be taking profits on, and you're only going to be up slightly. Are you going to have the ability to sell when we sell? Because when we sell, we're forecasting to be the top. And so what happens after we top, Maddie? We go back into a bear market. And are we going to get a bear market soon? I think so. I think we're going to see another bear market upcoming here. I don't think we've ever projected here like, oh, it's only up forever now. I don't think we've ever said that. And so it's important to look at these investment strategies on behalf of these companies and realize that these are large amounts of funds and they have access to this capital right now. And they're going to be making transactions in a very tight and quick manner. And they're going to have a cost basis around the prices that we're currently at. And, what we teach is what we teach. We teach do not lump sum into the market. Do not take a bunch of capital and drop it into the market. Are we saying that we're better investment minded than the companies and their technical analysts? I would say so. I think Michael Saylor fired his technical analyst because he just buys whenever, but he does so because he views Bitcoin in a different manner than we do currently right now. And so not to get into the whole, investment strategy thing right now, because, we talk about it a lot, but I just want to keep that at the forefront of your mind. Like, yes, this is great. Yes, this is bullish. No, we are not bearish on XRP. We're actually bullish. Just to mention here, because this is going to be an XRP video, our biggest holdings are XRP. Shocker, guys. Oh my gosh, don't buy XRP, but you guys are the biggest holders of XRP. Yes, those two things can be true at the same moment. Yes, we could say XRP is a great asset. Yes, it's the large amount of our net worth. XRP, the biggest driver of my net worth currently right now. And also, don't buy it right now because, it's overextended. Can those two things happen, Maddie?
Yeah, definitely. And again, guys, a lot of this comes down to us just being chart focused after we know what the hell we hold, right? Like, I don't have to come back and forth and decide based on the most recent news article if XRP is still a good investment or not. I know it is. It's really more about once you understand those facts and you have that clear foundational grasping, you really just have to lean into the charts and let them make all of the decisions for you. Even some of our members that have been with us for a while, they've really chipped away at those behaviors of trying to immediately pop into the market. But even when you're super seasoned, you still once in a while have that impulse. And if you're doing that with having no charts and no regular studying of what's happening in the markets, you're going to make that decision all the time. So that's really what it comes down to, guys, is just having some discipline over your actual decision making. I'm not telling you guys you can't buy XRP if you think that you're just not going to be selling for 15, 20, 25 years and you see this crazy long-term picture. Fine, get after it. But I think while crypto is still young, guys, we're going to see still big vacillations in the market. Maybe they get less over time, but I don't see a bear market for alts where we don't see at minimum 70% of the downside. And I think that's being probably pretty light-handed. I think we're probably going to see more than that. But I just want you guys to remember that markets move in cycles. And although when we get to some of those higher prices, that sentiment is really high, that's really when we should probably be taking our foot off the gas and de-risking a bit, as everyone just could not get more bullish. So it feels odd to do the contrarian thing, but you absolutely have to do that even when you see bullish news and the charts are not aligned with that bullish news. You just can't bite the fundamental bullet. You have to always go with what the charts are providing.
Absolutely. We're going to get into the last news article here. So if you're with us up until this point, please like the video. It helps the algo. Show it to more people. I want big viewership. We did the Ask Maddie show a couple weeks ago, and it got like 9,000 views right now within a very, very short span. So it's like one of our most viewed shows, and it happened in a very quick manner. So I would also, guys, like this show to be well received, and you can do that by leaving us a nice little comment in the comment section and leaving a like. I want to get into this last news article here because it kind of ties up everything, because we talked about Prince Highness of Saudi Arabia talking about how bullish he is on XRP, and talking about one of the key indicators that led to the involvement of tapping American company VivoPower to buy XRP. And this, one of the things that happened there that he mentioned in his quote was Donald Trump and the announcement of a Bitcoin strategic reserve and the crypto stockpile. And so this is what we're talking about right now. The U.S. government's new strategic reserve, billions in seized crypto. So you guys remember when Trump announced the stockpiles, we covered it in March. It came out later that they were actually going to just be holding any of the crypto that had been seized from scams, dark web, and they're just going to be holding that, all right? And so they have not disclosed, however, how much crypto they're holding right now. So we're kind of in the dark, right? For the months preceding that big announcement, right? So now we have to go to some speculating tools like crypto firms. So Chain Analysis is able to look at on-chain and pinpoint from the documents with the court orders and news sources when these events happen, how much crypto is the government holding within their crypto wallet. So they've been able to trace the wallets linked to the US government. And this is what they've come to. They've come to that the U.S. government in multiple different wallets is holding $20.9 billion worth of crypto right now as of May 28th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And so they're holding about $21 billion. And we discussed last year a lot. Was it Loomis last year, Maddie, that brought up the 100 million over 5 years Bitcoin?
That's right. Yeah, they were trying to acquire 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, so 5% of total supply.
Right. So they're holding a lot of crypto right now, with 20.4 billion of it being Bitcoin. Yes. So a small portion in other crypto assets, and so the rest of outside of the 20.4 billion is other crypto assets. You might ask, what are those crypto assets? Is it XRP? Is it Solana? Is it Cardano? It's actually none of those. Unfortunately, it's cryptocurrency company related tokens like Binance token, BNB token, and FTX token. Ouch. Ooh, not a good hold, U.S. government. You probably could have got that out of the portfolio there. I think we would have been good. You actually don't need to hold that. You can get rid of it. It's fine. So very unfortunate. And so within the wallets, there is no holding of XRP, no holding of Cardano or Solana. So we're still waiting for those to come to fruition. I guess they didn't seize any funds that was those cryptos. None of those digital assets that they seized was XRP, Solana, or Cardano. So hopefully in the future, I guess we can see some of those assets so we can hoard it, or we can start buying some digital assets. I know we got some positive news with the stablecoin bill, so everything's going in the right direction here, Matt, but I need more, Matt. I was promised a lot, and just like with politicians, over-promise, under-deliver. I don't think that's too crazy to say.
No, definitely. It's honestly, at the end of the day, when you look at the way that bills move through Congress, like even stuff that seems relatively simple, you have an overwhelming majority of your constituents, and you still just can't get it passed, right? And it's because there's always going to be just that roadblock. You're always going to have a lot of friction in government. You're never going to have a smooth way out. And like we've talked about previously, the growth of technology is always so much faster because you have, especially now with the internet, people being able to communicate their ideas more quickly, work off each other's ideas. Technology has continued continues to grow at an exponential pace, whereas regulation continues to move at the same ridiculously slow pace. So this is unfortunately always going to be a part of if you decide to be in industries that are technology focused. But little steps are better than no steps. I'll take what we can get.
Little steps are better than no steps. Very well said, Matt. Team, we're going to cap it off right there. If you got something valuable here, make sure you leave a like. If you have a question, leave it in the comment section down below. I will pull that up for the Ask Matty show this Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, and we will see you guys then. Bye.